Celtic have not qualified for the Champions League phase, but who is to blame? Is it the players, is it the manager, is it the board, or is it a combination of all three? Welcome back, guys, to Fog Football. Let's get down to this answer. Let's find out who the real problem is at Celtic right now this season. Not a great start to their campaign, but they do have a 100% record. Will that remain intact in the league when they play Rangers? I do not know, but they're into the quarterfinals of the League Cup. They've got 3 wins out of 3 in the Scottish Premiership, yet to concede, so that all sounds good, but the reality is the one thing that Celtic wanted was the Champions League, that £40 million, and the players that you can get with that, and unfortunately they've not got it. They've been eliminated. So we put up the options here. Who's to blame? We've got the players, the manager, the board, and all three are equally to blame. Now, if there was a fifth spot, I would have maybe put up the spoiled, entitled fans who are just ungrateful at all the success the club has had, but at the end of the day, can't blame the fans. As much as some of them are really entitled and don't appreciate their club, can't really blame the fans for them getting knocked out the Champions League. They didn't really contribute to that at all. So, yeah, with 7% is the manager. And to me, that's mental. Brendan Rodgers, people say that he's world class. Some people would say that Brendan Rodgers is maybe outside of Jock Stein, the greatest manager that Celtic's ever had. A lot of people would go with that. And if he is so good, then you've got to hold him in a high standard. And if you hold him at a high standard, then surely you must believe that he is good enough with the players that Celtic have to defeat Kairat over 2 legs. And in fact, they couldn't even score. So I think that's an extremely low percentage there. I cannot believe that Brendan Rodgers has only got 7%. I mean, this is a so-called world-class manager, and he couldn't score a single goal. He couldn't get his team to score a single goal in 3.5 hours against Kairat. That doesn't sit right with me. Then we've got the players in 13%. Unlucky for them. Of course, someone will get blamed. I don't think people will blame the key players, so I think by players, a lot of people are just looking at the players that they deem not good enough. But when I look at the players, when I think who's to blame, I'm thinking more along the lines of the Callum McGregors and the Dyson Maidas, who, to be honest, just have not been good enough. Dyson Maida last season, phenomenal. This season, a shell of his former self. So, although to be fair, I did call it. I said at the start of the season, there's a good chance that we'll not see Dyson Maida replicate last year's form because he was so good. I think he was playing above his level. I believe that Maida's still a good player, there's no doubt about it. But for me, last season could very well be the best season of his footballing career. And to expect him to repeat that season after season after season, a bit unlikely. But yeah, 13% of the blame going to the players. I know people will look at Yang, Forrest, Ida, those kind of guys, but honestly, I think the bigger players for Celtic have failed to step up. Your McGregors, your Maidas, your Hatatis, and then you've got like the big signing Engels who just again done nothing. So is what it is. Right, the board are getting 27%. I mean, pretty simple here. The board haven't really spent any money. There's been a couple of signings came in and a bit of money spent after the Champions League elimination, but I just don't get it. If you're going to spend money after being eliminated for the Champions League, then why not just spend it before that, and then you can add more depth and add more quality to your team, and it gives you a better chance of going through. You know, if Celtic plan on spending 10, 15 million, like let's say for example, if the board are thinking of something along the lines of, if we don't qualify for the Champions League, we're only going to spend about 10 to 15 million. But if we do qualify for the Champions League, then we're going to spend about 25 million. I mean, double it, okay? Why not spend the 10, 15 million first, and then if you qualify for the Champions League, then spend the extra, because then that money that you've spent in the early part of the season, that's going to help you for the Champions League qualifier. It just made no sense to me how Celtic basically have waited until being eliminated from Europe to start bringing in a few players when, who knows, if they brought these players in before the 2 legs against Kairat, these players could have been enough. These players could have been game changers and they could have turned the tide for Celtic. So that is a bit strange to me, and I do think the board need to have some level of responsibility and blame. But the last option, 53%, all three are equally to blame, and I think this is fair. I think across the board, no pun intended, I don't think the board can take all the blame. I think you have to factor in everything at the club. Yes, the board could spend more money, they could give Rodgers more players, but I do believe that Rodgers has enough quality in that squad to get past Kairat, so he's got to take some blame, and then the players themselves have got to take some blame. Whether they're good enough or not, those are the guys that go onto the pitch, and they did not deliver, they did not perform. So I agree with the 53%. I think that is I think that's the correct answer there. If that wasn't an option and I had to put the blame on one particular, other vote here, I don't know who I would go with, because I think you can look at them all, and I think there's a reasonable case. Board should have spent money. I think the manager should have done better with the players that he has at his disposal, and the players themselves, were shite. So, I mean, it is what it is. Let's get into the comments. Let's see what you guys are saying. 63 comments, by the way. I will try and read them all. Not really in the mood, but here, anyway, let's go. Daniel Mullen, Rodgers' tactics are the problem. Been the same since the end of last season, and we blame the players dropping off, but they're genuinely being told to play this slow possession football. 500 passes, but 2 shots in a game. No crosses, just pass the ball into the net. Listen, I think Celtic have been poor since the end of last season. That game against St Mirren were shite, lucky to get a draw. Game against Aberdeen, they were shite, albeit I thought they were unlucky to not win the Scottish Cup. That was purely because of how bad their opponents were. It's not been great. Your girl Bonnie says all the above. Johnny Mabry, don't get how Brendan Rodgers is to blame when 2 of his best forwards were sold and 1 of his best wingers out injured. On the signings, Ida is pish, but done okay last season. But Rodgers didn't tell Lowell to fork out 9 million for him. Engels will come good, just justify his fee. And Trusty is okay for 6 million. What we have to remember, 26 million for 3 players is peanuts in today's world. 1.5 million for Nygren is an absolute bargain for a player that is worth 7 to 8 million. I mean, yeah, you can say that. I don't know. No, I disagree. 26 million for 3 players in Scotland is not peanuts. And you say that as if 26 million can't get you good players. Let's look at some of the players that Celtic have bought in the past for cheap, very cheap. In recent times, Matt O'Reilly, 1.5 million. I believe Nicholas Kuhn was 2.9 million. So those 2 players alone cost less than Trusty, and they went on for big money. I mean, Matt O'Reilly was at 26 million, I think, all in, and I believe Nicholas Kuhn was 18. So 26 million, if Celtic spend 26 million, they should be able to have a great team with spending 26 million if you spend it correctly. And it looks like last year Rodgers didn't do that. So, yeah. Outtrek says Fred, and Mackenzie Rollerford says that SFA is the problem. I'm sure they are. SFA, blame them. PK says Dermot Desmond, he controls the money. Richard Stephen, who gives a fuck? The people who are angry Celtic are out probably care. Harry, who cares? Move on and we will deal with it. Robert Langmuir, most of the players of reasonable quality wouldn't want to play in a farmers league. John says the board don't play football. Pat McGloon says Maida for missing a sitter. And I tell you what, he had another really good chance in the opening game as well in the first leg. So Maida has had the chances, I think, to win this tie. Alone, I think Maida could have won this tie for Celtic, and he's not done it. So yeah, maybe Maida needs to take some fault. Aiden CFC, who's at fault? Whose fault is it that Rangers never? Oh wait, the 9 goals they shipped. I mean, both teams are pretty shite. I wouldn't really, I don't know, brag. You're going to brag about not scoring a single goal against Kairat in 3.5 hours? Because I don't think that's that impressive. Liam Joseph Anderson, all 3 are to blame, of course, but the board have set the other 2 up to fail. I mean, I can sense that. Deadly Dyson, board all the way. They choose for the club to choke on their own blood in Europe by not spending quality coin on the right players. Now everyone is to blame, arguably, and now this set of players are readying to make Rangers look good on Sunday. Martin Nicole, gut it. Gust, glad there's a team worse in the zombies. Dead deluded FC, right? Okay. Sam Glasgow, can we not just accept that they were also a decent side, well organised, worked hard, had decent players? I don't know if they had decent players, but I mean, yeah, let's give Kairat a bit of credit here. They did work hard. They were well organised. Charlie Corrigan, 4 videos about the Celtic result last night. Radio silence tonight. No, not really. I don't think it was radio silence. Plus, there's this thing called a job. There's this thing called a fucking job, and yeah. Sometimes you have to work. I know a lot of people like to sit on the brew and collect free money, but for other hard-working people, there is this thing called a job, and sometimes you've got to do it. It is what it is. self-explanatory, really. Songcaster says, I agree. All three are to blame, but not equally. The players are to be held accountable, as they should have beaten the almighty Almaty. Look at Maida and his atrocious body language and awful facial expressions. When he took the penalty, he didn't care what happened next. He looks miserable, and a shadow of the player from last season. Hatate didn't look to get involved or receive or recover the ball. Another one with a miserable face and pathetic body language. Those two can, I'm assuming, leave. I think Hatate, when he's on form, I believe he's the best player that Celtic have, but yeah, he's so hot and cold, you just don't really know what Hatate you're going to get at times. Matthew Miles, oh god, it happens, there's no blame and everyone's prepared to do their best for the club. Is the scumbag you stuck up for Stevie Scumbag playing tonight? Wait, is the scumbag you stuck up for Stevie Scumbag playing tonight? I mean, what? No, Celtic got the Champions League, and this guy's, I'm assuming, referring to some Rangers player who's a scumbag. Don't. Whatever. Right, Stephen McClellan, horrible club. Right, fair enough. Richie Boy, even, was the poll made by a 7-year-old pathetic smooth brains, very smooth. No, I think I did make an error on the poll, but fuck it, you can't. For some reason, they don't allow you to edit polls, so I was like, fuck it, I'm not going to delete it. It is what it is. These players and manager have done us so good the last 4 seasons and have had 2 bad performances. The board are to blame for incompetence and a lack of ambition. The last 3 years, it's 100% the board's fault. Gary says the board went on the park, or the board, if you are a dim, clearly down to the players and the manager. James Tony, the board, that team have spent 1.5 million in 5 years. Mad joke. Didn't someone at Parkhead once blame the rest of us in Scotland for not giving them enough competition? Or it could be the grass. Rodgers has issues unless the grass is cut to standard. The legend of Larsson, so much for the elite manager from Ireland. We would be better off with Scott Brown in charge. At least he would show a bit of emotion when the players are off it. Scott Brown at Celtic, that could be interesting for sure. Cuff Dam says, the team needed help and the board's penny pinching cost us a place at Europe's top tournament. But ultimately, there is no excuse for not beating Karat. The team failed to perform, and that is Rodgers' fault. Yeah, I think Rodgers needs to take more blame. I think Rodgers is getting away with murder here, to be fair. He's the manager, and he set the team up for fail. If you look at the team across the City, Rangers, there's only one person really getting blame. And despite some of the players being shite, there's one person getting the blame for their downfall, and it's Russell Martin. So I don't know why Brendan Rodgers, to be fair, isn't getting more blame, but it is what it is. Quick Flick says, Rodgers is the most to blame. Any manager should have been getting Celtic through that tie. Maybe if we got players in early, we would have won, but it shouldn't come down to a few new players to beat a team like Karat. Otherwise, we could lose to Kilmarnock and say, it's because the board didn't get Rodgers signings. And we know no one would say that, and no one should be saying it here either. Agreed, actually. And you know what, Kilmarnock are probably better than Kairat. I would imagine so anyway. And I know we don't see much of them, and we only got 2 games to test them against Celtic, and people will say that Kilmarnock would struggle to have back-to-back draws with Celtic, but I don't know. Kairat, are they much better than Kilmarnock? Are they any better than Kilmarnock? I'm not entirely sure, to be fair. And Siggy Diamond said the board should have signed players, but that doesn't mean that the players they have are not capable of beating Karat. Questions do need to be asked over the choices of Brenda and the players, which I think is very true. Yes, the board could have spent more money. The board could have brought better players into the club, but you look at the money the board had spent last year, you look at the players that Brendan Rodgers has at his disposal: Carter Vickers, Schmeichel, McGregor, Hatate, Maida, Engels, £11 million. I just refuse to look at the Celtic team that played over both legs, and I cannot accept that that team and those players are not good enough for Brendan Rodgers to manage them over a win in this tie against Kairat. So, yeah, I think that Rodgers needs to take blame, but you can blame the board, you can blame the players, 100%. But normally the buck falls with the manager, and for some reason, Rodgers seems to be getting away with this one, when the guy across the other side of the city is getting absolute pelters, and rightfully so, because he's been dog shit. But it just seems to be when something doesn't go right for Brendan Rodgers, there seems to be excuses, it seems to be anyone's fault but his own. So yeah, I think Rodgers is to blame, but I'm sure all will be for, not all, but I'm sure if he beats Rangers on Sunday, it'll be forgiven, but it's going to be a close game, I think. Both teams are bogging, so yeah, it could go either way. Anyway, guys, that's it. Catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and peace.